You cannot be on this property. Mr. Brennan. This is officially condemned land. Condemned lady. I own this place. My grandmother left it to me. I never thought I would be standing in my own parking lot being told I was trespassing. But there I was, staring down a sheriff's deputy and the most dangerous woman in Timber Falls. I am Michael Brennan. And this is the story of how an HOA president named Victoria Ashford tried to steal my family's $200,000 lakefront inn using fake condemnation papers. Systematic corruption. And 6 years of cold, calculated planning. She thought a bankruptcy and 4 years of absence made me an easy target. Just another broken property owner who would fold at the first sign of pressure. She was about to learn that Catherine Brennan raised her grandson better than that. And this fight would cost her everything she had built. My first warning that something was wrong came before I even reached Sweetwater Inn. My fingers ached against the steering wheel of my Chevy Silverado as it wound up Lakeshore Drive. Every turn, bringing back memories I had spent 4 years trying to forget. November in Timber Falls, Georgia, meant the hickory trees blazed orange and gold, their leaves swirling across the asphalt like embers from a dying fire. Timber Falls had not changed. Population 900. Tucked into the Blue Ridge foothills where gossip traveled faster than bad weather. Everyone still knew who filed for bankruptcy and when. This was supposed to be the kind of town where your handshake meant something. Where neighbors helped neighbors. Where corruption was what happened in Atlanta. Not here. I had believed that once. The truck climbed the final hill. And Sweetwater Inn appeared through the trees like something out of a nightmare. 14 rooms arranged in 2 wings around a stone courtyard. A main lodge with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the lake. But Jesus Christ. Half the windows were shattered. Kudzu had climbed the walls like green fingers, trying to pull the whole structure into the earth. Water stains bled down the white siding like old bruises. And the metal roof sagged in places where winter ice had done its worst. I cut the engine and sat in the sudden quiet, my heart hammering. This place had been my grandmother's pride, her life's work. My inheritance and my failure all wrapped into one crumbling building. 4 years since the bankruptcy papers came through and I walked away from everything. The plan was simple. Pack up anything worth saving. Take photographs for insurance. Maybe find closure. Then get back to my tiny apartment in Marietta, where I worked 60-hour weeks as a drafting technician to rebuild what I had lost at 41 years old. But something felt wrong immediately. Fresh tire tracks cut through the gravel. Recent enough that I could see where someone had backed up and turned around. This morning, I stepped out into November air that smelled like wood smoke and coming rain. Behind me, gravel crunched. I spun around to find a Timber Falls sheriff's deputy walking toward me, hand resting casually on his belt. Travis Keller from high school. Though he had gained 40 pounds and lost most of his hair since then. Behind Travis walked a woman who looked like she had just stepped out of a real estate magazine. Tailored charcoal blazer. Blonde hair cut in a sharp bob. Carrying an iPad like it was a weapon. Everything about her screamed money and power. Michael Brennan. Travis's voice mixed familiarity with something that might have been regret. Man, I did not expect to see you back here. The woman stepped forward with absolute confidence. Mr. Brennan, I am Victoria Ashford, president of the Lakeshore Property Owners Association. You cannot be on this property. Lady, I own this place. My voice came out rougher than I intended. Inherited it legally from Catherine Brennan in 2019. Victoria's smile was patient, almost pitying. This structure has been condemned under County Health and Safety Code 14.7. You have 48 hours to remove any personal items. Her voice was smooth, rehearsed, like she had delivered this speech a dozen times before. She handed me official paperwork, county letterhead, official stamps, signatures that looked legitimate as hell. My stomach dropped. This was not some random harassment. This was organized, professional, and apparently legal. What emergency? The property has been empty for 4 years. Anonymous complaint regarding immediate health hazards. Black mold contamination. Structural damage. Potential collapse, threatening adjacent lakefront properties. Victoria checked an expensive watch. Since Sweetwater Inn sits within our HOA jurisdiction, we are obligated to protect the community. But there was something about Victoria's face that nagged at me. Like, I should remember her from somewhere. How did you know I was coming today? Word travels fast in a town of 900 people. Mr. Brennan. Especially when someone with your financial history makes plans to visit abandoned property. She paused. I actually tried to purchase this property from your grandmother back in 2018. Made several very reasonable offers for what was already becoming an underperforming asset. Catherine was quite stubborn about keeping it in the family. The memory hit me like cold water. Catherine had mentioned a pushy real estate agent who would not take no for an answer. Multiple phone calls, showing up unannounced. Increasingly aggressive offers, veiled threats about code violations and safety inspections. Victoria's professional mask slipped for just a second, revealing something cold underneath. Your grandmother was a stubborn old woman who could not see past emotional attachment to recognize genuine business opportunity. Now look what her precious family legacy has become. A genuine health hazard affecting property values for the entire community. My blood pressure spiked. Do not talk about my grandmother like that. Victoria regained composure instantly. The point is, Mr. Brennan, this building is now officially condemned. You have until Friday at 5 p.m. to remove any personal belongings. Friday. That is only 48 hours. Emergency condemnation procedures allow for expedited timelines when public safety is at immediate risk. It is all perfectly legal. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Let me understand this correctly. Someone inspected my property without my knowledge, condemned it without proper notice, and now you are telling me I am trespassing on my own land. Victoria was completely unfazed by the camera. All inspections were conducted following proper legal procedures with appropriate notice. Certified letters were sent to your address of record. 723 Maple Street, Marietta, Georgia. That is your current residence. Correct. I had never updated my address with the county after the bankruptcy. The mail was probably sitting in a pile of forwarded junk at the post office. I want to see the original inspection report. She handed me additional papers. I scanned them quickly. Official county seal. Inspector signature. Yesterday's date. Violations listed in painful detail. Everything looked professional and completely legitimate. But something bothered me. The photos showed damage I did not remember. Structural failure that looked recent, not 4 years old. Some of this damage looks fresh. 4 years of abandonment. Mr. Brennan. Georgia weather can be quite harsh on unmaintained structures. Victoria stepped closer, lowering her voice. However, I might be able to suggest a practical solution. I have a buyer who is very interested in purchasing the property as is. Cash transaction. We could close within a week. Let me guess. The buyer is you, a business associate, someone willing to take on the considerable risks and expenses associated with condemned property. Her smile turned predatory. They are prepared to offer fair market value for property in its current condition, which would be a fraction of what it is actually worth. Real value is determined by what a willing buyer will pay. In this case, we are looking at approximately $70,000. $70,000. The property was worth at least $200,000 with basic repairs. I felt the trap closing around me like steel jaws. I need time to think about this. You have 48 hours. Mr. Brennan. Victoria turned to leave, then paused. Oh. And any attempt to remain on the property beyond the deadline will result in trespassing charges and possible arrest. After they left, I walked the property perimeter, noting details my architectural training had taught me to see. Fresh tire tracks behind the main lodge. Boot prints in the dust near the back entrance. Broken glass swept into neat piles rather than scattered randomly. Someone had been here recently for more than just a casual inspection. I called Marietta Information for property lawyers. Third call reached Jennifer Caldwell. Solo practice with a reputation for fighting City Hall. $300 per hour that would eat through my savings like acid through metal. Someone is trying to steal my family's inn using what I believe is a fraudulent condemnation. Fraudulent how? Anonymous complaint. 48-hour emergency notice. Buyer standing ready with a cash offer, 1/3 of market value. The timing is too convenient. That could still be legitimate. Abandoned properties do develop serious issues. Mr. Brennan. This is personal retaliation. The woman filing the complaint tried to buy this property from my grandmother 6 years ago and was refused. Multiple times. There was a pause. That is concerning. I can review all documentation tomorrow morning. Fair warning. If the condemnation is legally sound. Fighting? It will be expensive. How expensive? $8,000 to $12,000 minimum. Possibly more if the county fights back hard. I checked my bank account. $9,200. My entire emergency fund, carefully rebuilt over 4 years of living like a monk. What if I just accept the buyout offer? Mr. Brennan. Even condemned property is usually worth more than what you described. But if the legal fight costs you everything, that is a choice only you can make. I stared at Sweetwater Inn in the growing darkness. Hearing my grandmother's voice. Promise me. Michael, if anything happens to me, do not let vultures get their claws into this place. This inn is family. It means something. I will fight. All right? Then, tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., do not sign anything. Document everything. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Brennan. This is Victoria Ashford. My buyer is very motivated. Could increase the offer to $75,000 for a quick decision. Friday deadline remains firm. I looked up at Sweetwater Inn's broken windows, at the kudzu growing through what used to be my grandmother's flower beds. Victoria Ashford thought she was dealing with just another broken property owner who would fold at the first sign of pressure. She was about to learn that Catherine Brennan had raised her grandson better than that. But standing there in the gathering darkness, one realization chilled me more than the November wind. Victoria Ashford had orchestrated this perfectly. She knew my finances, my timeline, my weaknesses. She had waited 4 years for me to come back. This was not just business. This was personal war. And she had been planning it since 2018. Jennifer Caldwell arrived Thursday morning with sharp focus and a leather briefcase. We met in Sweetwater's abandoned lodge, spreading condemnation documents across a dust-covered desk. Michael, this could be legitimate. Jennifer studied the notice, but a 48-hour notice is highly unusual. Standard procedure calls for 30 days minimum. This is aggressive. I pulled out Catherine's leather journal. My grandmother kept detailed records of Victoria's harassment campaign. Jennifer leaned forward as I opened the entries. July 2018, real estate woman called offered $190. Said insurance might be canceled if I do not upgrade electrical. Felt like a threat. August 2018. She brought county inspector without permission. Inspector very friendly with her. September 2018. Told Ashford woman never to come back. She said I would regret being stubborn. Final entry. Catherine's handwriting, shakier Michael. Do not let that woman steal Sweetwater. Something is not right. Protect our legacy. Jennifer looked at me seriously. Your grandmother documented a pattern suggesting Victoria was already running this scheme 6 years ago. Now she is finishing what she started. We drove to investigate the pattern. Harold Mitchell's former cabin was now beautifully renovated, worth $130,000. We found Harold at Timber Falls Hardware. His face hardened. Michael Brennan heard Victoria was targeting Sweetwater. Harold, what happened with your sale? His hands stilled. Last spring, Victoria called about neighbor concerns. Said, my cabin was lowering property values. Offered a cash buyer for $40,000. County might condemn anyway, she said. So voluntary sale would avoid complications. The county inspector, same guy who condemned yours. Davis. 4 hours inspection. Found electrical problems. Septic issues. Foundation concerns. 30 days to fix or face condemnation. Repair costs. $18,000 minimum. On Social Security, impossible. Harold's anger showed. Sold for $40,000. 2 months later, flipped for $105,000. Robbed. Linda Patterson's story matched. Her cabin now had Florida plates. At the post office. Linda nervously explained. Victoria contacted me about county requirements. Said violations could mean daily fines of $750. Upgrades would cost $30,000. Impossible on a teacher's pension. So you sold $55,000. Victoria handled everything. Thought she was helping. Linda's voice cracked. New owners sold it for $125,000 last month. 3 properties. Same inspector. Same timeline. Same buyers. Thursday afternoon taught me about small town power. Frank at the hardware store avoided eye contact. Sorry. Mike, liability concerns. Victoria is on the HOA board. Cannot make enemies. Gas station and coffee shop gave the same cold treatment. Victoria's influence spread like water through concrete, but allies formed. Harold and Linda offered support. David Cooper, Gazette editor, showed interest. 3 sales. Identical patterns. Newsworthy. If you provide documented evidence, I will write it. Victoria advertises with us. But truth matters more. Friday morning brought Victoria's countermove. Hand-delivered flyers overnight on county letterhead emergency community safety meeting. Friday. 7 p.m. Jennifer arrived quickly. Clever. She is positioning herself as community protector, not predator, making this about safety, not profit. By evening, 20 neighbors packed the community center. Victoria commanded the room in navy suit. Professional presentation materials. Coffee and cookies provided. Recent inspection findings at Sweetwater Inn pose risks to our lakefront community. Victoria began smoothly. Photos showed damage worse than reality. Inspector Davis determined immediate public safety emergency. Structural instability. Mold. Electrical hazards. I would like to address these claims. Pulled out my phone with morning photos. I am a licensed architectural draftsman with 15 years experience. The issues are typical of abandoned mountain property. Serious. But not catastrophic. Not emergency condemnation. Frank Mueller spoke skeptically. Why trust your assessment over county inspector? Because I am not the only one. I showed documentation. Harold Mitchell and Linda Patterson faced identical scenarios. Same inspector. A same timeline. Same buyer connections. The room shifted. David Cooper leaned forward. Interest obvious. Victoria recovered quickly. Spreading conspiracy theories does not address safety concerns. Inspector Davis has 20 years' experience. She paused for effect. This property has been community concern for years. Mr. Brennan's grandmother ignored maintenance warnings. My blood pressure spiked. My grandmother maintained Sweetwater responsibly for 30 years. Your grandmother was lovely but stubborn about accepting help, Victoria said with manufactured pity. I tried helping her understand the property was deteriorating beyond her ability. David Cooper spoke from the back. Victoria, clarify your business relationship with the buyers. Are you receiving commissions? Victoria's mask slipped briefly. Annoyance flashing. I provide real estate services. Like any professional, I receive reasonable compensation for my expertise. Does that not create conflict of interest when advocating for inspections that lead to sales? It creates expertise. I understand regulatory requirements and market realities. Most attendees left satisfied. Walking out. I heard fragments. Mike is upset about losing money. Victoria has been helpful. Inspector would not lie. David approached. This story has legs. But you need stronger evidence. Direct documentation of coordination. Financial records. Something proving quid pro quo. Jennifer looked grim. Tonight did not go well. Standing in the parking lot under November stars, I realized the scope. This was not just fighting Victoria's practices. I was challenging community faith in local institutions. Saturday morning, Jennifer arrived with files. I researched Davis's citation history. He has been writing the same story over and over, same electrical hazards, same septic failures, same structural concerns, identical code citations for every Victoria property these past 3 years. Real buildings age messily. They do not develop identical problems in identical language unless working from a script. Sunday afternoon, we gathered allies at the library. Harold brought his sale papers. Purchase agreement shows buyer as Blue Ridge Holdings LLC, incorporated 4 weeks before my sale. Linda's buyer was Lakeshore Properties LLC. Victoria handled everything. David took notes. Sophisticated operation. Victoria creates LLCs for individual transactions to obscure trails. Can we prove Victoria controls these? Corporate records might show agents. But beneficial ownership can be hidden through multiple layers. Monday brought Sheriff Keller to my truck. Mike? Complaints filed. 4 people say you have been pressuring them about confidential business. Victoria. Frank? Dorothy. Margaret. Victoria was using the same system she exploited for acquisition to silence opposition. Be real careful. Mike. Word travels fast. Within hours. I encountered social isolation. Conversations stopped when I entered stores. People avoided eye contact. Betty's Diner. Nancy served coffee with professional politeness. Mike. Honey. Victoria has been good to this community. Sometimes better to let sleeping dogs lie. Timber Falls valued stability over justice. Tuesday. Frank posted a sign. Store reserves right to refuse service to anyone engaged in harassment or defamation. By evening, effectively banned from basic business, Jennifer drove up with groceries. Victoria is playing this perfectly, making you the aggressor, herself the victim. How do we fight back? Gather evidence methodically. Wait for Victoria to make a mistake. People like her always overplay their hand. That evening in my truck, I felt crushing weight, running out of money. Allies. Time. Deadline Friday, 5 p. M. I pulled out Catherine's journal. Michael. Do not let that woman steal Sweetwater. Protect our legacy. For the first time, I seriously considered accepting $75,000. It would end this nightmare, but the thought made me sick. Wednesday morning brought the sound of gravel crunching as David Cooper's Honda pulled into Sweetwater Inn's parking lot. He climbed out carrying a laptop bag and the determined expression of someone who had made a difficult decision. Mike. I have been thinking about our conversation. My editor is nervous about Victoria's advertising threats. But I convinced him we have a responsibility to report factual information about public interest issues. I felt a surge of hope. You are going to publish the story. I am going to publish a carefully researched piece about property sale patterns that raise legitimate questions, not accusations. Just documented facts and timeline analysis that readers can evaluate for themselves. David opened his laptop. The headline will be, Property Sale Patterns Raise Questions About Local Inspection Procedures. Over the next couple of hours, we trimmed the story down to what could not be argued with. Dates, prices, inspection codes, and a simple chart that lined up 3 distressed sales in 18 months with the same inspector and the same kind of shell companies waiting on the other side. When he finally sat back, he said, "It does not call her corrupt. It does not accuse anyone of a crime. It just shows people what has already been done and lets them decide what that means." The Timber Falls Gazette published every Thursday. David's article appeared on page 1 below the fold by Friday afternoon. The fault lines in Timber Falls were obvious. Some neighbors called to say the article finally put words to what they had quietly suspected. Others made it clear they thought I had dragged the town into a mess. The most significant call came Friday evening from County Commissioner Sarah Walsh. Mr. Brennan, I have read the article in your local paper. The information presented is concerning enough that I believe the county should review our inspection and condemnation procedures. Would you be available for a meeting next Tuesday? Absolutely. What kind of review are you considering? Nothing dramatic. just a public forum where residents can present concerns and county officials can explain current procedures. Transparency benefits everyone involved. Commissioner Walsh scheduled the meeting for Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. Word of the official review spread through Timber Falls over the weekend. Some residents were relieved. Others viewed it as unnecessary government interference. Victoria moved quickly to reclaim the narrative. Monday evening, she hosted a property owners protection forum, and almost every chair filled up. Instead of whipping up fear, she walked people through inspection jargon and legal citations, casting herself as the calm translator. She never used my name or David's, but everyone understood who she meant when she warned about sensational stories. When one neighbor pressed her about whether she made money from the companies buying condemned properties, she folded the question into a polished answer about ordinary commissions and licensing rules. By the time people were heading out, Victoria had not truly answered anything. But she had given nervous residents just enough reassurance to keep believing in her version of events. Tuesday evening's county meeting drew the largest crowd Timber Falls had seen in years. Commissioner Walsh estimated 30 residents packed into the community center, along with David Cooper, Inspector Davis, and Victoria Ashford. Commissioner Walsh opened with a brief explanation of county inspection procedures, emphasizing that all processes followed established legal protocols. However, when citizens raise legitimate questions about how these procedures are implemented, the county has a responsibility to provide transparent answers. She invited me to present concerns. I had prepared carefully, focusing on documented facts. Commissioner Walsh, what I am asking for is not special treatment, but a hard look at how condemnation power is being used. I laid out Jennifer's chart showing how quickly complaints tied to the same neighborhood jumped to the front of the inspection line and turned into emergency orders, in case after case. The same inspector moved from an anonymous complaint to an emergency order in just a few days, using nearly identical language to describe very different properties. That kind of copy-paste enforcement might be efficient, but it is not what due process is supposed to look like. These patterns suggest either remarkable coincidence or systematic coordination between inspection, scheduling, and commercial property acquisition activities. Given the significant financial impact on property owners, I believe county review is appropriate. Inspector Davis was given the opportunity to respond. He appeared nervous but prepared. All inspections were conducted according to established county procedures, following legitimate citizen complaints. I cite violations based on objective evaluation of property conditions against published building codes. Any similarities between cases reflect consistent application of the same safety standards. Commissioner Walsh asked pointed follow-up questions about complaint sources and inspection timing, but Davis's answers remained technically correct while revealing no substantive information. Victoria was invited to address the meeting last. I understand why Mr. Brennan is upset about his property situation, she said with manufactured sympathy. Inheriting deteriorated property creates emotional and financial stress. However, personal disappointment should not undermine legitimate safety enforcement that protects our entire community. She emphasized her years of community service and track record of helping residents navigate difficult property situations. Commissioner Walsh concluded with measured diplomatic language. The county will review inspection procedures to ensure they continue serving community interests effectively. However, I want to emphasize that county officials have found no evidence of procedural violations or inappropriate coordination. The meeting ended without dramatic revelations. Community opinion remained divided, roughly 60-40 in Victoria's favor. Walking to my truck, I overheard fragments of conversation Seems like Mike has legitimate concerns. But Victoria has been helpful. Maybe there is some truth to both sides. David Cooper approached. Mike, that went better than I expected. You presented facts professionally and raised questions that needed raising. Commissioner Walsh took concerns seriously, even if she could not act decisively. But Victoria still has community support. She does. But it is not unanimous anymore. Seeds of doubt have been planted. Sometimes that is how change begins. As I drove back to Sweetwater Inn, I reflected on the evening's mixed success. I had not achieved vindication, but I had forced official acknowledgement of legitimate concerns. Victoria's position remained strong, but it was no longer unassailable. The war was not won, but for the first time, it felt winnable. The county review had one immediate effect that caught everyone by surprise. Inspector Davis requested a meeting with Jennifer Caldwell on Wednesday morning. Away from official county buildings, they met at a truck stop diner 20 miles south of Timber Falls. Jennifer called me immediately afterward, her voice tight with excitement. Michael, Davis is scared. Really scared. He did not admit to anything directly, but he painted a picture of feeling pressured to prioritize certain inspections without understanding the broader implications. What kind of pressure, according to Davis? Victoria Ashford has been filing citizen complaints about property hazards for over 3 years, always with detailed descriptions of specific safety concerns and urgent language about community risk. She presents herself as a concerned HOA president, protecting neighborhood welfare. Jennifer's voice carried excitement. Davis said Victoria seemed unusually knowledgeable about building codes, inspection procedures, and legal timelines. She would call his office with questions about hypothetical violations, asking about enforcement procedures and condemnation processes. That does not prove coordination. No. But it establishes a pattern of Victoria educating herself about inspection procedures and maintaining regular contact with Davis's office. More importantly, Davis admitted he felt professional obligation to respond quickly to Victoria's complaints because she presented them as urgent safety concerns affecting multiple community members. So he is saying she manipulated him. He is saying she was very persuasive and very knowledgeable. Whether he was manipulated or willingly cooperated, that is a question for deeper investigation. Wednesday afternoon brought news that changed everything. County Commissioner Walsh called to inform me that Sweetwater Inn's condemnation order was being suspended pending a more comprehensive independent inspection. Mr. Brennan, given the concerns raised at Tuesday's meeting, we believe an independent evaluation would serve everyone's interests better than proceeding with current condemnation orders. Commissioner Walsh explained they were arranging for a state-certified inspector with no local connections to conduct a thorough evaluation within the next 10 days. I felt relief flood through me. For the first time since this nightmare began, I had breathing room. But Victoria Ashford's reaction proved more revealing than I could have anticipated. Thursday evening, as I was organizing materials in Sweetwater Inn's old main lodge, I heard a car door slam with enough force to suggest serious anger. Victoria Ashford walked through the front door without knocking, her professional composure completely absent. "This is intolerable," she announced, her voice carrying fury. "You have turned this community against itself with wild accusations and conspiracy theories designed to cover up your own failures." I pulled out my phone and started recording. Victoria, you are trespassing on condemned property. I think you should leave. Condemned property that should have been sold weeks ago if you had not manipulated that newspaper editor into publishing irresponsible gossip. Victoria's mask was cracking badly. Do you have any idea how much damage you have done to legitimate business relationships? I have exposed systematic exploitation of vulnerable property owners. You have destroyed years of careful work building community trust. Victoria moved closer, her voice rising. Your stubborn grandmother cost me years of business opportunities. And now you are trying to finish her work of preventing reasonable development in this area. The admission hit me like electricity. Victoria had just confessed to a years-long campaign against my family. So this is about Catherine refusing to sell to you 6 years ago. This is about people who inherit property they cannot maintain, then blame others when reality forces difficult decisions. Victoria's professional training was completely abandoned now. Your grandmother was offered fair market value multiple times. She chose stubbornness over sense. Fair market value. You were offering $200,000 for property worth $400,000. Even then, I was offering a realistic price for property that required extensive renovation and carried significant liability risks. Properties like Sweetwater need owners with vision and resources, not sentimental attachment to failed business models. I kept the recording running. Victoria, how many other property owners have you pressured into selling below market value? I help property owners avoid expensive legal battles they cannot afford to fight. Harold Mitchell would have spent $60,000 in legal fees and still lost his property. I connected him with buyers who paid a fair price and took on renovation responsibilities he could not handle. Buyers you control. Buyers I work with professionally. There is nothing illegal about connecting willing sellers with qualified purchasers. By manipulating county inspections, by reporting legitimate safety concerns to appropriate authorities if Inspector Davis finds violations. That is his professional judgment. But her tone suggested she knew how thin that explanation sounded. Victoria, did you coordinate with Inspector Davis about inspection timing? I provided information about properties that pose community safety risks. Davis makes independent decisions about citizen complaints. Strategic complaints you filed to create pressure for profitable sales. Legitimate complaints about properties that violated county safety codes. But Victoria's voice cracked slightly. I decided to push harder. How many properties have you acquired through this process? I provide real estate services connecting sellers who need help. I offer practical solutions that protect people from financial ruin. At 35% of market value, at realistic prices that reflect actual conditions and legal complications. Victoria was breathing heavily. Condemned properties are not worth full market value. I realized Victoria genuinely believed her own justifications. Victoria, you have systematically targeted elderly and financially vulnerable property owners, used county connections to create artificial pressure, then profited from forced sales. That is predatory business practice. That is solving problems people cannot solve themselves. Victoria's voice reached a near shout. Your grandmother could have avoided all these complications by accepting reasonable proposals 6 years ago. Now you are repeating her mistakes and blaming others for your poor judgment. The recording captured everything. Victoria's admission of targeting Catherine specifically, her years-long campaign, her coordination with Davis, and her complete lack of recognition that her business practices constituted exploitation. I think this conversation is over. Victoria, this is not over until you understand that fighting me will cost you everything. Victoria moved toward the door, then turned back. You think your lawyer and newspaper friends can protect you? I have been building relationships in this community for years. You are an outsider trying to destroy established institutions. People will choose stability over conspiracy theories. After Victoria left, I sat in Sweetwater Inn's empty lodge, listening to the recording. She had just handed me the evidence I needed to expose everything. Her anger had led her to confess motivations, methods, and coordination she had been carefully concealing. The question now was not whether I could prove Victoria's corruption, but whether the community would care enough to demand accountability from someone who had positioned herself as their protector. Friday morning brought a call from County Commissioner Walsh that marked the beginning of Victoria Ashford's careful retreat from Timber Falls. Mr. Brennan. The county has completed its preliminary review of inspection procedures related to your property and similar cases. While we found no evidence of criminal misconduct, we did identify administrative irregularities that warrant corrective action. I put the call on speaker so Jennifer could hear. What kind of corrective action? Inspector Davis will be reassigned to different duties within the county building department, effective immediately. Additionally, we are implementing new oversight procedures for condemnation orders to ensure proper documentation and review processes. Commissioner Walsh paused. We are also prepared to offer a settlement of $35,000 to resolve your concerns about improper condemnation procedures, contingent on your agreement not to pursue further legal action against the county. Jennifer leaned forward. Commissioner Walsh, what about Victoria Ashford's role in these irregularities? Miss Ashford submitted her resignation from the Lakeshore Property Owners Association Board yesterday evening, citing personal reasons. The HOA has accepted her resignation effective immediately. It was a carefully orchestrated resolution that acknowledged problems without admitting liability, removed problematic personnel without acknowledging corruption, and provided modest compensation without setting precedents. Commissioner Walsh, what about the other property owners who were affected? The county is prepared to review any specific cases brought to our attention and address legitimate concerns through appropriate administrative channels. After ending the call, Jennifer and I discussed the settlement offer. $35,000 would not fully compensate for my legal fees and lost time, but it represented official acknowledgement that county procedures had been improper. Michael, this is probably the best outcome we can realistically expect. Jennifer said, the county cannot admit to systematic corruption without exposing themselves to massive liability, but they are acknowledging problems and taking corrective action. What about Victoria? She just resigns and continues her business. Sometimes justice is incremental rather than dramatic. Victoria has lost her official position. Her community credibility is damaged, and her business model has been exposed publicly. That is significant accountability, even if it is not criminal prosecution. The weekend brought news through David Cooper's reporting that filled in details about Victoria's strategic withdrawal. She had listed her real estate office for sale, terminated her lease on downtown commercial space, and quietly informed several clients that she was relocating her business. Victoria is conducting a managed retreat. David explained when we met Sunday afternoon. She is liquidating local business relationships and preparing to establish operations somewhere her reputation is not compromised. David, what is the community reaction to Victoria's resignation? Mixed, as expected. About half the people think she was unfairly attacked. The other half are starting to ask questions about whether there might have been problems they did not recognize. David pulled out his notebook. Frank Muller told me yesterday that he always wondered how Victoria seemed to know so much about properties before they came on the market. Dorothy Smith mentioned that Victoria had asked her several times about her maintenance costs and whether she had ever considered selling. People are connecting dots they ignored before. Some people, others are choosing to believe Victoria was a good person who got caught up in bureaucratic complications beyond her control. The independent state inspector arrived Monday morning. conducting a thorough evaluation of Sweetwater Inn that took 7 hours. His preliminary findings supported my assessment that the property needed significant renovation but did not pose immediate safety hazards requiring emergency condemnation. Mr. Brennan, this building has issues typical of mountain properties that have been vacant for several years. The inspector reported Tuesday afternoon. Foundation settling. Electrical systems that need upgrading. Plumbing repairs required. Serious work, but not catastrophic damage. Estimated renovation costs in the $50,000 to $70,000 range for basic safety compliance. Wednesday brought Victoria's final public appearance in Timber Falls. A brief statement at the weekly HOA meeting, announcing her resignation and thanking the community for years of support. I did not attend, but Harold Mitchell did. She thanked everyone for their confidence, said she was pursuing new business opportunities that would require relocating, and wished the community continued prosperity. Harold reported, no admission of wrongdoing, no apologies, just professional courtesy and strategic withdrawal. Did anyone ask questions? Several community members asked about ongoing concerns. But Victoria deflected by emphasizing she was no longer in any official capacity to address policy issues. Basically, she threw Davis under the bus by suggesting any problems were county administrative issues outside her control. Thursday afternoon brought the settlement paperwork. Jennifer reviewed the documents carefully before recommending acceptance. Michael. This settlement acknowledges that county procedures were improper without requiring you to prove intentional corruption. It is a face-saving compromise that gives you most of what you wanted, your property back, financial compensation, and systemic changes to prevent future abuse. I signed the settlement agreement Friday morning, officially ending the legal dispute that had consumed 7 weeks of my life. Friday evening brought a call from David Cooper with news that put Victoria's departure in final perspective. Mike. I just confirmed that Victoria Ashford purchased a real estate office in Asheville, North Carolina, about 200 miles east of here. She has registered a new business license under the name Mountain View Property Solutions and is advertising services for distressed property acquisition and development. So she is just moving her operation to a new market where people do not know her methods. Exactly. But here is the interesting part. I contacted the Asheville newspaper and shared our articles about property inspection patterns. They are interested in monitoring similar activities in their area, especially since Victoria's advertising specifically targets rural and mountain communities. At least other people will be warned. Sometimes that is the best you can do. Make it harder for bad actors to operate by exposing their methods and creating awareness among potential victims. 6 months later, I stood on Sweetwater Inn's renovated deck, watching spring sunlight dance across the mountain lake. Coffee steaming in my hands, listening to sounds I had almost forgotten were possible. Children's laughter echoing from the shoreline. Parents chatting quietly on the lawn. The comfortable bustle of a small family business operating exactly as it should. Sweetwater Inn had reopened as Sweetwater Retreat. 6 modest guest rooms. Family-style breakfast service. And the kind of authentic mountain experience that could not be manufactured by luxury developers or corporate hospitality chains. Harold Mitchell emerged from the maintenance shed carrying tools. At 72, he had become Sweetwater's unofficial general manager, handling everything from plumbing repairs to guest recommendations. Mike, that family in room 4 wants to extend their stay another 3 nights. Harold announced. Kids caught their first bass yesterday. Parents cannot drag them away Dorothy Smith remained convinced I had unfairly destroyed Victoria's reputation. She represented the quarter of Timber Falls residents who would always view Victoria as a victim rather than an exploiter. Victoria helped this community for years, Dorothy maintained. One bad situation does not justify destroying someone's entire career. I had learned to accept such perspectives without arguing. Small towns heal slowly from internal conflicts. Some relationships would remain damaged permanently. But most residents had moved on. The independent inspector's final report had vindicated my assessment, confirming that renovation costs totaled $63,000 rather than the catastrophic expenses Davis had projected. County settlement funds covered basic structural repairs, while profits from my drafting work financed guest room improvements. Sweetwater's success remained modest but sustainable. We averaged 75% occupancy during peak summer months, 45% during spring and fall, and closed completely during winter. Annual revenue projected at $72,000. Enough to cover operating expenses and gradual facility improvements without requiring debt financing. Catherine's vision for Sweetwater had emphasized family experiences over profit margins, community service over luxury amenities, authentic hospitality over manufactured entertainment. The current operation honored that philosophy while adapting to contemporary realities. Jennifer Caldwell visited occasionally, bringing her own family for weekend retreats. She had become Sweetwater's unofficial legal counsel, handling permits and regulatory compliance issues. Michael, you have built something authentic here, Jennifer observed during a summer evening visit. This feels like what mountain hospitality should be. Genuine, affordable, focused on experience rather than luxury. David Cooper had parlayed his investigative reporting about property corruption into freelance work for regional newspapers, developing expertise in rural governance issues and small-town accountability. Your story became bigger than Timber Falls. David explained during a recent visit, I have been contacted by reporters from other mountain communities dealing with similar schemes. Victoria Ashford was not unique. She was part of a pattern affecting rural areas across Georgia, Tennessee, and North Carolina. His articles about Sweetwater's transformation had been reprinted in several regional publications, attracting guests who appreciated supporting businesses with ethical foundations. Standing on the deck as another perfect mountain evening settled over Timber Falls, I reflected on lessons learned through 6 months of rebuilding. Victoria Ashford's exploitation had been defeated not through dramatic confrontations or criminal prosecutions, but through patient documentation, community awareness, and persistent commitment to truth over convenience. Sweetwater stood as proof that systematic corruption could be overcome by ordinary people willing to fight for principles larger than personal comfort. Catherine's legacy lived on not just in renovated buildings and satisfied guests, but in the understanding that family properties represent values worth defending against those who measure everything by profit margins. The mountain lake reflected stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear children's voices planning tomorrow's adventures while their parents relaxed in the kind of peace that money cannot buy, but honest hospitality can provide. Victoria Ashford might be running similar schemes 200 miles away in Asheville, but Timber Falls had learned to recognize predatory business practices disguised as community service. Sometimes that is the best victory possible, not eliminating corruption everywhere, but making it harder to flourish where people have learned to ask uncomfortable questions about comfortable assumptions. The ending leaves a sour taste, does it not? Michael won the battle, but Victoria just moved her scam to a new town. It really proves that justice is not always a gavel banging. Sometimes it is just surviving the fight to see another day. Silence really is a predator's best friend. Be honest, would you be happy with just getting your house back, or would you want total revenge? I think I would still be furious, but maybe that is the point. Real justice is not always satisfying. It is messy, incomplete, and frustrating, but it is still worth fighting for. Because the alternative is letting people like Victoria Ashford win without any resistance at all. And that is something Catherine Brennan would never have accepted.